Hey, it's Zane Simon of Bloody Elbow here, and I am doing an extra special mid-month version of the Cutting Room Floor. We are in the middle of a rollback for the UFC, and we're even in the middle of this rollback. I don't think we've seen the end of it by any means. Uh, Reports came out recently that the UFC is planning on cutting 50 fighters this month. We've already seen 22 of them go, including the retirement of Soa Palelei as the most notable move the last month. So I'm just going to kind of do a couple of brief update videos over the course of the next couple weeks to keep everybody abreast of what's going on, just in case you hate reading. I mean, this stuff gets reported too, but we want to cover all our bases, get you up to speed on what's going on with the UFC. My normal disclaimer: this isn't anything where I'm not exalting or really taking a lot of joy in anybody losing their job or getting cut from the UFC. I like most fighters. At least I like watching most fighters fight. I don't have any, strong desire like, oh, so glad they cut that guy, and I don't want to, get into being happy about anybody losing their job. But it's just, this is the kind of information, especially if you want to think of MMA as less of a carnival and more of a sport, which can be hard at times. This is the kind of information that is really good to keep track of and get to know. Like, you want to follow your favorite football team, your favorite baseball team. You follow who gets cut, who gets signed and released. You follow the draft. You follow all sorts of stuff like that. This is kind of MMA's version of that, is UFC cuts and signings. That's how a lot of the behind the scenes parts of the promotion move, is all this talent that comes and goes, and the UFC doesn't do a very good job informing people or keeping track of it for them. So I'm trying to keep everybody up to date on this. I'm going to run through a lot of this stuff really quick because, like I said, they just cut 22 people. I don't want to spend. I'll spend at the end of the month. I'll go back and do my normal thing and really take some time. Maybe do like an extra special hour-long show. But this is not that. Just want to focus. Give a rundown of the names, focus on a few things, focus on a few people that I think can really come back and that we might see again, focus on a few surprises, and move on from there. So, just a quick rundown. Like I say, Soa Palelei is the lone heavyweight to go so far. Matt Van Buren, the lone light heavyweight, former tough contestant. Then we got a few middleweights who have been released: Ron Stallings, Luke Zachrich, Roger Narvaez, and Eddie Gordon, which is a bit of surprise on Gordon, as he was a tough winner. He's lost 3 in a row, but he had announced to move down to welterweight, and it kind of seemed like that was going to give him one more fight for the promotion. I'm not surprised that, after 3 straight losses, he's gone, but it was a little surprising considering that he'd already announced his next career step, and it seemed like it involved the UFC. Then welterweights, got a bunch of welterweights: Luis Gonzalez, William Macario, Joe Merritt, Pavel Pavlak, Hernani Perpetuo, Amir Sadala, TJ Waldberger, Roger Zapata, Chris Clements, all gone from the welterweight division. Sad to see Clements go. Sad to see Perpetuo go. I really thought he was going to be kind of an interesting talent for the UFC when he got signed. A little surprised they cut Merritt and Gonzalez. They're both young 0-1 fighters. They've only had 1 fight for the promotion. They both had closely contested fights for the promotion. They both worked and did a decent job in their debuts. Still lost, but it really just seems like this is a major dropping of the axe for the UFC out there. So some guys in that position are going to go. I think Merritt definitely has a high athletic ceiling, but he needs a lot of seasoning. He's somebody that I would expect to see back in short order with a few more fights under his belt. Then lightweights: Ivan George, Batman's gone. Naoki Kotani is gone. I'm surprised they kept him as long as they did, frankly. He 0-5 for the UFC over his whole career. Leonardo Mafra, David Michaud, Wagner Hocha, Frank Trevino, nobody's really surprised there. Christos Giagos, all the lightweights that are gone. A little surprised by Giagos. I think he's also somebody that's got the athletic tools to compete, but just hasn't quite put the skills together behind it. And a little sad to see Bulldog David Michaud go. He seems like a fun guy. Seems like a nice guy. Seems like he was really a scrappy, tough fighter, but not necessarily terribly surprised. And those are all the names that got cut most recently. Like I say, a few of them more recognizable than others. William Macario, certainly tough, another tough winner. I'm a little surprised to see go. But I think the big thing we're seeing here, and I want to just present this as a little more of a general analysis, and I posited this the other day out on my Twitter feed, was that I think we may be, and I'm going to couch this, and this isn't even necessarily an optimistic thing because I'm not saying it like, oh, I've been praying for this for so long, but I think we may be seeing a general culture shift in how the UFC is running compared to their past 5 years. Since kind of 2010, 2009, we really saw the UFC, and especially when the Fox deal came in, this major push to flood the market at all corners to get as much UFC talent in front of as many people as possible, as often as possibly could happen. We got 47 events in 1 year, and we were getting 2 event days on weekends, and just the roster ballooned up to 600 fighters. And it just seemed like everywhere you looked, there was a UFC fight going on all the time. We got international seasons of Tough, so there'd be 2 seasons of Tough running at the same time. There still are right now. And it kind of feels like a lot of that is starting to scale back, starting to go away. We're not seeing like a dramatic drop in events, but we're seeing fewer. This year we saw fewer than last year. I think next year we might see a couple fewer than we did this year. We have seen this year now multiple weeks without an event scheduled. We aren't seeing any multi-event days anymore. We do have one 3-event push at the end of the year, but apparently that had to do with some scheduling stuff for the UFC, and it sounds like they just decided once they had to move an event really close to another one within 2 days of it for a concert that was going on, they just decided, well, why don't we just make it a 3-day kind of weekend bonanza thing, which is going to be insane to cover, but it kind of makes, I'm fine with that. It just feels like we're seeing a little bit of a move from this idea of as many events as possible at all costs. Maybe 2014 may have seen the expansion to the point of contraction for the UFC, where they pushed so far the market as far as it would go, and they saw pushback. They saw lower pay-per-view sales. They saw less interest in the product across the board. And now this year, you're seeing heavy promotional push behind specific stars. Every event isn't just a UFC event. We now have Ronda Rousey events. We now have Conor McGregor events. We're starting to see Sage Northcutt and Paige Van Zandt events. The UFC has stars they want to push now, and not just as part of a UFC event brand, which was all anything was over the past few years. So I think this cutback, it sucks to see people go, but it is kind of more of maybe, hopefully, a return to some sort of pre-expansion normalcy of the UFC has succeeded in flooding the market. They don't have any competitors out there anymore. They are essentially the MMA brand when it comes to MMA. And maybe now we're going to see something that starts to look more balanced, a roster that's maybe not quite so bloated. I would be surprised if it ever dips far below 500 fighters. I'd be shocked if it ever dropped much below 450. I'd be shocked if they ever ran less than 40 events in a year again. But maybe not so much a push to 600 and to 50 events a year. a cutback, a scale back, a recognition that you build specific events, specific space, specific talent, and you don't just get everybody out in the world who has a winning record and stick them on your card as though they are going to be the highest caliber of fighter that fans should want to pay for. That may be something that we're starting to see. We're seeing, in this, we've seen a lot of guys getting released, like Roger Zapata, like Luis Gonzalez, like Joe Merritt, like Perpetuo, who aren't bad fighters, who aren't tested, or who aren't, haven't been just totally shelled out of the UFC, who haven't been shown that they aren't worth developing, but they may have more developing to do than makes them valuable UFC fighters right now. They may not have, they aren't bringing any of the intangibles of a fan base or a specific country that they carrying with them into the cage, like you might get for some other fighters that the UFC would want to build despite a less impressive record. But they're just not quite there yet in their career. And maybe, the UFC can start letting a few more of those people fall by the wayside rather than just trying to snap every last one of them up and make sure that they don't go to Bellator, they don't go to World Series of Fighting, or they don't go to ONE FC, as these companies no longer look. I mean, Bellator looks like they're doing better, but they seem like they're going in a very different direction than what the UFC is. They have their own promotion, they have their own product that they're pushing, and they always have when it was just the sport first thing, but it's now something that I think the UFC probably feels less threatened by than ever. So I don't know, that's just my 2 cents on it. We're going to get, I think, a lot more cuts, and I'll do another show on it coming up, just a really quick overview of it. But in the meantime, thanks for tuning in. Give this video a like. Subscribe to MMANation.com for more updates, more news, more interviews, more analysis. Find me on Twitter at TheZaneSimon. Read me a bloody elbow. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.